Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to make a video today about something that a couple of people had requested, which is navigating the morning anxiety. And when I was coaching, I would say 99.5% of people had the pattern of, I feel horrific in the morning. And then as the day goes on, the symptoms seem to sort of taper. And it was a range of reduction for people. Some people felt totally normal in the evening, but most people had just a reduction of symptoms as the day went on. And then the evening came and then they felt like I could breathe a little bit. And my best understanding of this, or the way that I interpret it, is cortisol is highest in the morning and lowest in the evening for people. Just naturally, it helps you to wake up in the morning, and then it lowers in the evening to prepare your body and mind for rest. And the HPA axis, so the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, I believe it's like a 3-organ loop or a system that controls the stress response, and the release of cortisol gets tipped out of balance when you have issues with these drugs. And so that is, to me, the best explanation or my understanding of why so many people have this pattern. And for myself, so my first withdrawal from 20 milligrams of citalopram that I took for 7 years and tapered for only 4 weeks, I did not have this pattern. I felt horrible 24/7 for 6 months. And then my symptoms disappeared overnight for 7 months. And then they came back full force for another 18 months. And then I reinstated. So when I was reading on the forums this windows and waves pattern, I was like, I don't get it. I don't have this pattern. And it took me 8 months to even figure out I was in withdrawal and discover the forums. And at that point, I was in that time period where my symptoms had gone away overnight. But I was like, what the hell just happened to me for those 6 months? And that was when I figured it out. But I was kind of perplexed by the windows and waves things. And even the worsening in the morning and lessening in the evening, I didn't have that. So I was in that 0.5% of people that didn't have that. However, when I reinstated, I went back on citalopram, but I also took many other drugs. So I reinstated citalopram. I tried Luvox, Zoloft, Prozac, Risperidone, Seroquel, Ativan, which I took for 3 months. I tried Zopiclone, gabapentin. I also was taking beta blockers at that time. I'm probably forgetting some, and I was prescribed many more than that, which I refused to take. But that reinstatement timeframe in trying all these drugs lasted 3 to 4 months. And I came off everything in February of 2021. And for the first 6 months, I had this continuous misery pattern. Again, just like my first withdrawal, but it was intensified now. And then at the 6-month mark, instead of the symptoms going away, I started having 1 or 2 hours in the evening, or sometimes more than that, but it was right around that amount of time, late in the evening, where my symptoms would lessen. They wouldn't go away, but they would dilute. So the looping intrusive thoughts would be a little more in the background. The vibrations, the burning, the tinnitus would lessen somewhat. And that was, I guess, how I described a window, but it didn't really feel like a window, because in my first withdrawal, it was very different, and I had my symptoms lift overnight at 6 months. So this was very different, but I also had that kindling effect and trying all these other drugs and benzos and that. So I was in this sort of slight lessening in the evening pattern from about 6 months to 21 months. And then at 21 months, I started getting long windows, and I really felt like I was turning a corner, and my brain changed for the better. And I remember one morning I woke up, and for the first time in years at that point, I didn't wake up with a looping brain, and I was thinking normal thoughts, because for years at this point, my life consisted of, how do I distract and survive another day? And I felt kind of normal this one morning, and it was so strange to me, because I had kind of forgotten what normality was at that point, because from the time my symptoms had come back after that 6-month disappearance in my first withdrawal to when I started turning a corner in my second withdrawal, it was 3.5 years. And so but the total time at that point was 4.5 years. And so it had been a long time. And for years before this happened to me, I would wake up in the morning and just have a clear head and try to just wake up and yawn and kind of zombie walk my way to the kitchen, make coffee, and just go about my day like a normal person. And then I went into this survival mode for years. And then like at that 21-month mark, I just woke up with a half clear brain and just was like, I want to sit on the couch and have a coffee or a warm drink and watch a TV show. And it was foreign, but it was like the best feeling in the world. And I knew that things were changing at that point. And so I just want to encourage you and say that so many people experience this. And I have talked to people who have tried to combat that cortisol increase, that exaggerated cortisol increase, by taking supplements like phosphatidyl, is it serine or choline or both? I can't, one of those will really mitigate that cortisol, that high cortisol. And I've seen some people really have success with that, but a lot of people are so sensitive to supplements in withdrawal, and so going down that road is not a good choice for them, and I respect that. That was me as well. And some people will have like a 4-point cortisol saliva test, I think that's what it's called, and I don't know the pros and cons of those. I never had that myself, but it would be interesting to see. Like, that might be something you want to explore just to see where you're at. And maybe it won't be cortisol for you. Maybe I'm way off on that, but that's kind of my guess as to why it's so much worse. But regardless of what the exact cause is, the vast majority of people in withdrawal have this pattern. One of the things that you could do, other than, the supplement thing or maybe testing your cortisol, would be to use the bulk of your coping skills in the mornings. And sometimes, I know a lot of times when I say coping skills or tools in your toolkit, it's not implied, or I'm not implying that you do these and your symptoms will go away. It's just a way to cope and get through. And even if it works to dial down your symptoms 10%, to me it's worth doing. So one thing that often helped me with the physical symptoms was walking. So if you think about it from a cortisol perspective, then something like gentle exercise like walking can be really good to expel some of that excess energy in your body. Now, if you're someone who comes from quite an exercise background like I do, that can be a really hard adjustment to make. It was super hard for me to go from someone who worked out really hardcore to having to walk. I'm someone who never enjoyed walking. I thought it was so boring, and it felt endless and just not fast enough. And it didn't give me that runners and endorphins high that I was used to, but it was better than the alternative of doing nothing, because that made me feel worse because I had so much excess energy. So walking, or depending on how bad your symptoms are or your ability to go out, swimming can be really good for that, especially if you have muscle symptoms and like the jerking or just pain and that inflammation feeling, the buzzing, whatever you might be going through, it can be helpful. Or some people will find more gentle exercise like Tai Chi or yoga or just stretching. Anything like that is typically best for people with these heightened symptoms, especially in the morning. Or even if, like, I have found that for myself and so many people that I talk to, talking to people is so helpful. Just even on the phone, on video chat, supports people that anything, because it just can engage the mind in a way that pulls you a little bit out of your symptoms. And so if you know anything about my story, this is something that I relied on so much, was walking and talking. So walking for so long every single day outside, and then talking to my supports at the same time, because I just felt crazy mentally if I was walking without talking and engaging. But just talking and engaging was sometimes hard because I had all that excess energy in my body. So combining the two was helpful. And so any type of distraction techniques that lessen symptoms at all for you or help you out in any way, it's best to kind of bulk those more in the morning when the symptoms are so intense. And I have made a video about this, and I speak about how active distraction tends to be the best rather than passive distraction. So And a lot of people I've talked to have said the same thing. So passive distraction, something like watching TV, watching a movie, even something like reading a book can be impossible for people, or possible, but it doesn't help really distract them or pull them away from their symptoms. And that's why I've suggested active distraction. Something that's really engaging for both body and mind can really be ideal for people with pretty intense symptoms, especially that are worse in the morning. And this all really depends too, because some people have to go to work in the morning, and so they can't be doing all of these rituals or all of these things in the morning. And I understand that, and I acknowledge that everybody has a different. That's why when I was coaching, I really like to get people's whole stories, because some people were retired and were able to dedicate more time to doing these types of practices, and other people had young children to raise, or they had jobs to go to, or both, and it just wasn't as doable for them to go for an hour walk in the morning, or be calling friends, or going swimming. So it really depends on your personal situation as well. So that's why if you found some things that work, doing them in the morning can be the most helpful, especially if they're active and engaging as much as possible in your situation. So I hope this is validating. So are you someone who has the sort of typical windows and waves where you'll have a few days where you feel almost normal and then you crash? Or are you someone who just has like a worsening in the morning and then you get kind of better in the evening? Let me know. Or are you someone who just never has windows? Or how do you describe your pattern? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.